Hi there, welcome to the latest edition of The Front Page. Lots to talk about this week, including British Racing's 2025 fixture list, a very important job advert, and big news from France on the racecourse and also off it. And I'm sure we'll find time to talk about other things as well. My name is Mottershead, and the names of the two people sat next to me are Peter Scargill, Racing Post Deputy Industry Editor, and Liam Headd, making his debut on the show. And Liam, you have a big job, or you've just got a big job, which we'll talk about in a second. Before we do that, Pete, we went to Ascot on Saturday, didn't we?
We did. We had a lovely day together, Lee.
Didn't we just?
We did. We revelled in the action of the Scargill Cup, and then didn't go to Sugar Babes afterwards.
Scouting for girls?
No.
Denise Van Outen?
Did you go to them?
No.
No, I didn't go to them.
No, I was trying to get back for the athletics.
Oh, I see. Fine. You've always been a sporting purist.
I wasn't competing. I was just planning to watch. But you enjoyed the Sugar Cup?
It was all right. It was fine. As a standalone day, it's fine, isn't it? But, nobody at Ascot sees it in any other context than a day for what it is. Everyone had a lovely time, by the looks of things. And apart from Team GB, which bottled that Team GB in Ireland, bottled it, didn't they?
Yeah.
Leading going into the last race. Very disappointing. But otherwise it was fine. It was
heads
fine,
roll, do you think?
Very possibly.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if Tag O'Shea keeps his role as team captain for next year.
Yeah.
These are important roles in racing. We're discussing important roles in racing at the moment, aren't we?
Yeah.
And Tag's got a front up. The fact his team bottled it in the last.
We start the show with sincerity. I quite liked it. I enjoyed the show. I think it's what it is. I like it. I enjoyed it. There you go. Liam, so your debut on this programme, congratulations.
Thank you.
Not sure that's quite the right word, but anyway. And more importantly, you will be starting as the Racing Post Lambourne correspondent from September.
Yes, a role very much I'm looking forward to. I've got a lot of exciting opportunities coming my way in the next few months, and it's great to get back to a patch, an important patch in the racing industry where I know quite well from my past adventures. So I'm looking forward to getting going again.
And you're basically going to be living in Constitution Hill's box, I guess, for the next 6, 7, 8 months.
Yeah, we're bunk beds. I think we're sharing for the next few months. So, looking forward to all the news that comes that way and everything else that goes on in the village.
Fantastic. Good luck with the job. You'll be great.
Thank you.
No talk about Constitution Hill this week. There will be talk about the British fixture list in a second, but firstly, we have news of the Racing Post Insider. That then is the Racing Post Insider, a really exciting development, and if you scan the QR code there, you can sign up. No QR codes needed from Pete Scargill in our first story of the week. That is about the unveiling of British Racing's 2025 fixture list and assorted matters. Pete.
The exciting news that nothing's happened, Lee.
Woo!
Isn't it? In the end, nothing of particular notice has happened.
Change is dangerous.
Yes,
Who likes change?
although no change is more dangerous,
yes,
based on the reaction so far.
Yeah.
So the headlines for anyone that's not seen it, the fixture levels have essentially stayed the same. I think there's 8 fewer, but there's more races to sort of counteract what's been lost. There's going to be more prize money, 10% more prize money for Premier Race Days League, which are remaining at roughly the same level, slightly fewer, but pretty much
basically
the same, given that the Jockey Club gave back 5 fixtures earlier this year. We're continuing with the Premier project. We're continuing with the protected window as well. This all-important decluttered window on a Saturday afternoon. And most people are very unhappy about it all.
And why are they unhappy? What are they unhappy about?
I mean, where do we start?
Go on.
Where do we start?
Try.
It's I think it's a feeling that we are fiddling while Rome is burning, isn't it? I don't know what impression you've had from the coverage and the conversations you've had. I entirely understand the position that racing's figures have taken, the commercial committee and the BHA board, in saying, look, we've got 6 months worth of data, which is part of the problem with this, isn't it? We've launched this new project, but we've launched discussions of the fixture list at the same time. So when they're looking back and saying, well, what's working and what's not, they've only got the first half of the year's figures to work with. Although, as I will come on to in a minute, those in themselves aren't particularly encouraging, are they?
No.
Based on the blog that was put out by the BHA last week. So I think there's this feeling that the Premier project's not really worked. I thought the comments from Ripon that's in today's paper.
David Carr's piece.
Really noteworthy, weren't they? They ran it. It's 215 grand worth of prize money for Great St Wilfrid's Day, and the chief executive said, "Well, I don't really see the benefit of a Premier Race Day. What's the point?"
They'd have to pay 35 grand more in prize money to get a little label.
Which because sure we're not doing the slogan, isn't it?
Marketing's not my thing. So they're not happy. People like Amy Murphy wasn't happy. She was very critical of it.
No, Amy Murphy is one of these sort of buccaneering yards that have looked across the channel to France, which we'll come on to later.
With tremendous success as well.
Absolutely. I think Scott Burton did a piece with her where she's had 18 runners over there.
Yeah.
And they've won nearly as much as her runners in Britain, which is like nearly 200 runners in Britain. And look, she's obviously sending her best horses to France, but at the same time, with the premiums and with the prize money, it just works. And then she's been able to sell horses for, Hot Darling that won a couple of races in France, sold for just shy of £500,000 before Royal Ascot. Form in France is sold on. And I think her point is that, this is the model she's had to adopt. And how is it in any way beneficial to British racing? What's going on? So I think people wanted more radical change, but it's, how likely that ever was to be, I don't know. But at the same time, we're all sitting there as we go through this incredible turbulence, thinking, God, when will this stop, and can we do anything to stop it? Or are we going to nosedive into the ground at some point?
And Pete, you referenced the markers that the BHA sort of judging successful failure by, and were those largely positive or negative in terms of how we're doing so far?
You know the answer to that question.
I do. You know, but I'm teeing you up.
So the markers, which were to make racing more competitive, with greater field sizes, more marketable or interesting to people as a betting product, to get more people through the race, through the doors, have all been bad so far, haven't they? Apart from on the biggest race days. So on the biggest race days, they've held up well. So people still want to go racing on the big days, which is good, isn't it? We still have a product that people want, but betting turnover is down. Attendances are down. The number of high-level horses is down, particularly over jumps.
I was going to say jump racing. The numbers for jump racing were
40%, wasn't it?
That's
the horses rated 130 plus. Now, nobody who's watching this is going to go, "Oh my goodness, there's no good jumps horses," because we've seen it, but it's stark, isn't it? And if you are to take the position that Premier Racing as a product was targeted more at the flats, then how are you replacing 14% of top quality jumps horses that have already slid away to other countries or aren't there anymore? So there's a lot of challenges within this. And Richard Wayman, who's the very capable and very savvy Chief Operating Officer at the BHA, is already saying, look, we're already looking at next year. And administrators like Richard give you confidence that something good can come of this. But at the same time, with the whole structure, and we know, and we'll come on to later, with the turnover at the top of British racing's power structures, there's a lot to throw into one pot to try and cook something of your quality, Lee.
You're very kind. Pavlova yesterday.
Oh, there you are. Right, exactly. So that's we're looking at Lee Mottershead Pavlova level, but we're not getting to that level at the moment, are we?
We're not. Liam, in terms of the number of fixtures at British racing stages, the lament that you hear across the industry, and also now from bookmakers, is there's too much racing, and that never seems to change. From your perspective, is there just too much of it going on?
I think so, Lee. I think the changes have been made. We've covered it all week since the changes were made earlier in the week. From the 2024 number, we're only down 8 race meetings. I don't think that's enough, to be honest. Pete alluded to the fact that you know, Amy Murphy's looking elsewhere to go racing. Obviously, she's got a fantastic operation in France and she's doing well. But I think from the wider point of view is we want British racing to be as competitive as possible. And when there's too much of it, it kind of takes away the shine on some of the bigger meetings. Listen, it's, you know, the BHA made a song and dance about the, you know, the fixture list, and it's come out and everything. But I just think there needs to be more done to please everyone. You're not going to please everyone. It's a hard sport to please, but you kind of need to make it sustainable for the future in the longer run. And I think the fact that, you know, these changes have come out, the fact that it's not changed radically, like we said, makes people concerned for what could happen next time.
And you've also got, just to interject,
Yeah.
you talk about the level of racing, right?
Yeah.
So the theory is you have lots of races
Yeah.
because people bet on the races.
Yep.
And then through the media rights payments and what have you, we get lots of money and we put that into the sport, and it's marvellous, right? That's the theory, isn't it?
Yeah.
Boiled down, I'm not a high level operator, Lee, you know, I'm quite a simplistic person.
Don't do
That's the
that.
bottom line,
Yeah.
right, isn't it? But you've got Michael Dugar,
Yeah.
who's the now chair
Yeah.
of the Betting and Gaming Council, the bookmakers lobby group, saying there's too much racing and there's too much not very good racing, but said in a different way. And you've got all the participants saying there's too much racing and it's no good. And you've got Flutter, who's Sky Bet, Betfair and Paddy Power, saying we're not going to bet on this racing because it's unprofitable for us.
Yeah.
Right? You've got bookmakers saying we're not doing it. So they've just been streaming racing. There was two fixtures last week where they didn't even offer any odds on the betting. So nobody is seeing this as a functioning product. And then you look at the bottom line. It was Brighton's big meeting last week, right?
Three-day festival.
And
Yeah.
we all appreciate that Brighton's Summer Festival of Racing isn't Glorious Goodwood. It's not,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's their big meeting of the year, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And they had multiple races run during the week where it was less than £3,000 to the winner prize money.
Yeah.
So no,
At a festival meeting.
yeah. And
Yeah.
like I say, even accounting for the fact that it's
Yeah.
you know a lower level, like nobody is benefiting from things as they are. So that's where the frustration comes from, isn't it?
We say nobody's benefiting. The people making money out of the media rights, you can argue they're benefiting from staging that sort of meeting.
Hadn't considered them.
Yeah.
I hadn't considered them, Lee, and
Yeah.
perhaps that's an oversight on my part.
Well, no.
But yeah, I mean, you've got that ongoing, rumbling on in the background as well, indefinitely, as the editor told me would be the case. Tom, last time we were down here, he said this would be rumbling on, and that's the case.
Yeah.
So this is the difficult position, and this is why there's such frustration at the fixture list, and you know, all of the people that have come out and expressed there, because they're saying it's not working for anybody as it stands. So can we do something? Can we focus on the important people? Is it Project Beacon? You could tell us more about this because you wrote about it in your column, haven't you?
So there's Project Pace and Project Beacon, which are looking at what comes after this 2-year Premier Racing trial. Project Pace, the way I've been led to believe it, which may or may not be correct, would be involved in bracketing together a small number of super premium flat fixtures and seeing if there's some sort of commercial deal you can do with a third party with those to try and really pump money into the sport. And the second one, Project Beacon, will be what's been billed as the biggest single piece of consumer research in British racing history to try and really understand why people come into the sport, what they like about the sport, what they don't like about the sport, why they might leave the sport, what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy. Sort of thing that you'd imagine racing would have done way before now.
This is Jed Shields' point. You were back a few months
way
ago.
before now. Individual racecourses would say, well, we understand our customer group. You go to Goodwood, they say, we understand what a Goodwood customer is, but seemingly British racing as a whole hasn't done that. So that could be potentially really valuable in terms of what comes next after Premier. But I suppose the Premier thing itself is also still a hot potato, isn't it? You had that debate last week, Liam, of people saying, how can British racing have 150, 160 days that are showpiece days, elite days, because no sport really has that many days. And you've got people saying that you need to cut the number down if people are really going to understand what a Premier Day is. But at the same time, the BHA would say, well, okay, that might well be correct, but it's because we've bracketed these days as Premier that money has been pumped into the fixtures. So if we suddenly say we're going to slash the number by 2/3 now, are you just going to lose a big chunk of prize money? It's a difficult one.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, the idea of Premier Racing was brought in to essentially make the sport more competitive, you know, attract the bigger names into these specific race days, you know, between a certain point in the afternoon. But I get the pros of it, and you know it's an opportunity for, you know, those trainers who don't have, you know, the quality or quantity in their yards to compete at the highest level and, you know, win as much prize money as possible. But in the same way, you kind of almost take a shine away from some of the other racetracks that have had to hand Premier statuses back to the BHA because, you know, they can't fulfil it. And I think you've kind of got to look at the bigger picture and think, who is Premier Racing benefiting in this current period? We know it's a 2-year trial. Not a lot's changed from the first year to what we're going into the second year. So I think it's trying to find that balance between what's right for the longer term, and I just think it's something that they need to seriously look at as we go into the second period.
I suppose, Pete, finally, before we move on from this one.
But no, we can talk about this for ages, Lee. Don't rush on. We can keep talking about it.
That's very sweet of you.
Just carry on. And we can be here forever. Make the whole show about.
I love your commitment to the cause. Even if you put these projects, Pace and Big, into one side, and if you just said, okay, Premier Racing, 2-year trial with
sort of 18-month trial.
Well,
really.
that's going to be my point. You see, because it isn't really 2 trials, is it? Because the fixtures has come out now for 2025. Where are we? Early August.
Just before Yorkley.
Just
after the Scargill Cup. Remember, we had a lovely day there.
We did. It was gorgeous. So in effect, decisions have to be made by midsummer. So the 2026 fixtures will be coming out around this time next year. By when they'll have to be making decisions on, if it's about Premier Racing, based on a year of data, maybe a year and a bit of data. So it's really a 1 and a bit year trial and a 2-year trial.
And you can't use the excuse of we're still running a trial at that point, can you? Because even for all of the displeasure at what's come out now, and perhaps the placating of it by people saying, well, you know, this thing still works, we're still working on it, we know. If it comes to this point next year, and you and I are at the Scargill Cup discussing the fixture list, and nothing's changed again, I mean, I can't even think of the right term for it. Maybe there's going to be complete loss of faith in the people responsible for putting it together, aren't there? Because you can't keep promising somebody that something that's going to change is going to get better, and at some point it doesn't, does it? Because in the end, people just stop believing you.
They do.
And I don't know, but at that point, does everyone go, right, we're going to have to sell to the Saudis or the Qataris or to CBC or someone like that because we've got no other option. Right? That's the best option all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden they are the solution to all of the problems, and that actually all you're doing is making other problems.
And in terms of, this is finally, in terms of keep making promises that don't get fulfilled. I know Bill Barber is writing about the whole marketing aspect of Premier Racing and the GBR situation at the moment in his column, which we haven't seen yet because it comes out later on today. So you might well have seen it by the time you watch this. But again, as things stand, Liam, we are months into the trial now, and we still really, with Premier Racing, all we have is the logo in terms of consumer experience. I did a piece earlier in the year. We're told about all these things that will be coming along to enhance the consumer experience on Premier Race days, to really make them feel distinct. But if they've happened, if they've materialised yet, I haven't seen them. And at some point, they're going to have to materialise, but will they materialise at a point before or after they have to make a decision on whether to continue with the 2-year trial?
Yeah, well, I think, again, Pete alludes to, you know, you hear these changes come in and you hear what's going to happen and what might happen and this, that and the other. But the longer this goes on, the more questions we have about Premier Racing. whether it's sustainable in the long run, what's going to happen. And the longer we keep, thinking what could happen, the less kind of faith we have on what actually might happen in the future. So, these changes need to be implemented, and they need to be thorough to ensure that those dealing with Premier Racing, whether you're a trainer or an owner or whoever in the sport, they need to know where they stand and where this goes to the next step.
Yeah. What I'm going to do now is a segue, and I'm quite pleased with this segue, because we're talking about what happens next with Premier Racing and the 2026 fixture list. It won't be Julie Harrington who makes those decisions as BHA Chief Executive, because she won't be BHA Chief Executive.
Well, why is that, Lee?
Because, and we go on to story 2, the BHA has put out an advertisement, or an advertisement, I don't know how I meant to say that, for the BHA Chief Executive's job. It was in the Racing Post over the weekend, and is a reminder that Julie Harrington will not be in the role this time next year, or indeed early next year. It was also a reminder that there will be many changes to people in the top jobs of British racing when we move into 2026. The BHA chair role, currently held by Jo Saumarez-Smith, that has also been advertised. Applications for that one closed in July. I'm told we should hear about who is landing that role probably now early in the new year, perhaps. The BHA Chief Executive's job advertisement was very similar to the chair one, in that similar requirements are expected of both individuals, particularly, interestingly, in terms of commercial knowledge. Both advertisements for chair and chief exec stress that the winning applicant would need to have good commercial nous and contacts, because they explained that under Julie Harrington's tenure, the BHA has taken on a more commercial role in terms of the industry strategy. The chair position had stressed that good government contacts would be helpful, would be useful, but we've subsequently been told that all politicians who apply for the job of BHA chair haven't reached the interview stage, and that the BHA's nominations committee is looking much more towards someone with that strong commercial background and experience that we spoke about. Where the job specs, or in terms of the advertisements for chair and chief exec, differ is in terms of racing knowledge and interest in racing and expectations in relation to that. The chair advertisement read, and I'm quoting this from my column now, they will also bring with them an active knowledge of and passion for horse racing, which is critical given the complex stakeholder environment within the industry. There was nothing similar to that within the BHA Chief Executive's job spec within the advertisement. That might have been something that was just overlooked, or it could just be that they're looking to find two very different people for chair and chief exec. One of them obviously will have to have good knowledge of horse racing. If they appoint a chair with racing knowledge, perhaps that means they don't need a chief exec with the same deep knowledge of the fixture list and past attempts at levy reform. All interesting stuff though. Who wants to talk about this first? Hands up.
Oh yes, I'll do it.
Go on then.
Yeah.
What did you take from the BHA Chief Executive advertisement, and are you thinking that a certain sort of person is likely to be wanted for the role?
Yes.
Go on then.
So you have very succinctly pointed out the differences and the key thing. I mean, clearly, money matters, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Money and commercial nous matters, because we're going through this cycle where racing's funding has been dramatically impacted. The impacts of the Gambling Act review will be made formal at some point, won't they? And as we discussed in the previous segment, the issues around media rights and what have you at the moment. Yeah. There's going to be a pressure on finances in the next period, this cycle, as they call it, don't they? Yeah. So it reminded me slightly, I covered for Chris Cook on his Front Runner email. So Front Runner is the email that goes out to our members every morning, and it's incredibly popular. Chris has been nominated for awards for the work that he does. So, no small shoes to step into. One of the pieces I did was, I spoke with Jane McGivern,
yes,
who, Dash Grange stud, Golden Horn, Yeah, and when the chief executive, when Julie Harrington's departure was announced, loads of people said, great, Jane McGivern can do it. Which she said she was flattered by, but it wasn't right for her at the moment. But she points out two things which interest me in terms of how you've put them forward in your column. One, which she said that it wasn't necessary for whoever comes in as chief executive to have a deep understanding of racing, as long as they had a deputy or somebody they could work with who did. So clearly that's been thought through in terms of the BHA's adverts.
Within the BHA sort of executive, there are lots of people with deep, intense racing knowledge.
But that would sort of strike against the view held by many of the sports participants who say that if they're not someone who is deeply ingrained within the sport and knows everything about it, regularly goes to Kelso on a Wednesday, then they're going to fail. They're doomed to failure. So the fact that someone as smart as Jane McGivern and the BH advert sort of relate there is interesting. And she points out, she said what racing needs is that needs Archie Norman. So if you don't know who Archie Norman is, a very successful businessman. He was an MP for a while, and he's the guy that turned around Marks and Spencer as a failing concern.
Turned him into a great big food purveyor.
Right. And she's saying that you need somebody as a chief executive who'll come in, they'll listen, but they'll make hard decisions, and they have a track record or an understanding of dealing with organisations that are failing. And I think that's really important. I don't think you can have someone come in who is just going to come in and accentuate the positives. You've got to have someone that's coming in and say, look lads, we're in a tight spot here, aren't we? We've got some things we've got to sort out. And to be bold enough to try and pursue that within the constraints of the executive position.
Yeah, isn't that the part of the problem though? If you bring in an Archie Norman type figure.
No, just bring in Archie Norman.
Just bring in Archie Norman. The BHA chief exec job spec talks about the need to act commercially, but are they allowed to act commercially? I said they can think commercially, but will they actually then be allowed to implement what they want to do? What's your take on it, Liam?
I think it was important that in the job advert, I don't think someone in politics should have the kind of responsibilities to deal with everything that goes on in racing, because it kind of needs someone to come in. It needs a fresh start. We know that, but it needs someone who has got experience in the sport, whether that's dealings in the past or someone who's been involved from the sides for quite a while. There's so many different situations and issues that need to be tackled, and I think it's important that obviously the right appointment is made, because it's such a significant job. We know what needs to be done, and authorities in the sport, those in the industry need to be comfortable dealing with whoever steps into this role, and it's important that the right appointment is made and matches the credentials that the BHA are looking for.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you talk about the right appointment, which is the correct way to phrase it, but the right appointment is a range depending on who you speak to, isn't it? And that's part of the problem. But the other thing that fascinates me with this, mostly because I'm boring, is that can you think of another sporting political executive role that is that people are so sort of passionate about their who should hold it?
No, I can't.
In the end, no one that I'm aware of, and granted I'm a horse racing reports and not football reports, but do you get people tub thumping about who's going to be the new chief executive of the FA or of the Wembley Group or whatever? I don't know if there's a Wembley Group. I'm showing myself up.
But I take your point.
You know what I mean? Wembley Stadium is a venue.
Yeah.
It's incredible the right people feel to express their views on it and say, I think it should be this person.
Yeah.
And say how put out they are when it's not their person. So this is just throwing that into the mix, really, isn't it?
And I suppose there's also the question that this harks back to a really powerful column that Alan Byrne wrote not long ago.
Brilliant column.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the people who've held the role of BHA chief executive and are deemed perhaps not to have left with a smile on their face, having had a great time and been hugely well received. But these are really talented people with great backgrounds. They can't all have failed in the job. Is it actually just the job itself that sets the people who take it up for failure?
The expectations of the participants of their chief executive.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we heard, getting Barry Hearn, we want Barry Hearn to come in, take charge of everything and sort it all out, that's what we need. And, you know, there's some credibility in that kind of argument, but as we said, like, you can't, the structure's not set up for Barry Hearn or someone of that ilk, is it? So whoever comes in has to work within the structures that are set out for them, and the structures are probably better than they were when Julie Harrington came in. It's one of her achievements that she's managed to force through this government, or, you know, work to create this governance change. But it's not going to be an easy job. I just I hope that the way that racing sometimes portrays itself and the way it puts forward doesn't put off people from applying. No, I mean, you would know better than I would in terms of who may or may not have applied for the chair role. But it seems that some people with quite impressive CVs and achievements had at least said, I'm interested in this. So you would hope that despite perhaps the limitations on their power and the fact they'll get slated in your column every Monday, Lee, that whoever comes in as chief executive or is prepared to apply for the role does so and doesn't think, you know, I don't need this hassle for, you know, the pay and that I might get out of it, because it is a tricky time that's coming in, and we need people not to be put off by the situation. Although I'm sure if you get to a chief executive position, you probably aren't put off by things too much.
No. I think that was a very statesman-like address. The sort of address that would be the sort of thing that a chief executive of a...
What a terrible thought, Lee. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? I think you and I going to Sharjah Cup Day at Ascot is more my role. You know.
And mine as well.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, we know our place. But if you are thinking of applying, bear in mind what Pete said there. We want good people to do the job, so get in your application. We are now going to move from racing politics to racing on racecourses, and particularly in France. The Olympics is over. Wonderful, wonderful thing indeed. But the action on the track continues, and Liam Headd has big news from France in relation to the Group 1 race that took place at Deauville yesterday and two of France's top trainers.
Yes, Lee, huge news in France, huge developing news this past week that Jean-Claude Rouget and Jérôme Régnier are going to be linking up together from 2025. They're going to be joining forces and operating all over France with their massive operation, the Super Stable, as we dubbed it in our story earlier in the week. And I think it's massive news for the sport. It's massive news for France and everything that comes with it. You know, Rouget is, you know, the top trainer in France. He's had an unbelievable spell, you know, over the years, and the fact that he's decided to link up with Régnier is huge for the sport. It's huge for the owners in the country, and it's exciting to see where this goes.
It's surprising. I mean, obviously, we've not seen Jean-Claude Rouget on a racecourse for a big chunk of this year for medical reasons. But if you look at where their two stables are, they're in pretty much every corner of France, or Deauville, Pau, Marseille. It's a long walk from one yard to the next.
I'm not sure they're going to be on the gallops each morning.
No,
I get your point.
Yeah. But having said that, if you look at somewhere like Australia and the big stables there, something like Kieran Mard, they're all over the
and America as well. They have
absolutely, they go from barn to barn. Yeah, so this presumably will work. It can work, and potentially the size of this operation could be, well, it will be huge numerically, but in terms of power. The firepower that these 2 yards will have brought together will be frightening for everybody else in French racing.
Well, yeah, interesting. Now, I'm going to pass off our France correspondent, Scott Burton's opinions as my own.
Go on.
Because I did get in touch with him this morning to see what the mood music had been. Yeah. Scott's in Deauville at the moment, probably on the beach. Yeah. Doing whatever you're supposed to do.
Croissant in
hand. You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So the reaction seems to have been in France that this is not the end of the world, and that they don't think that everyone's going to be steamrolled by the double R
Yeah.
going forward. Albeit, it does bring together, the established yard in Rouget, with his 2 recent ARC winners in Sotsas and Ace Impacts. He's the most successful European trainer.
Most prolific. Yeah,
prolific. That's what I mean. Yeah, and Renier, who's obviously an up and coming trainer, also like Factor Cheval, and Lazat, that obviously won the Maurice de Geese the weekend before last. So there's, it's 2 powerful yards joining up, and that is going to change the dynamic. But particularly with Rouget, obviously he's been off the course with exhaustion.
Yeah.
And there'd been some concern or some intrigue, depending on which way you look at it, about what happens, what's the succession planning at Rouget. They didn't want it just to fall flat, or him to put himself to the position where he's completely exhausted all of the time. So I think that the feeling is that it's tied up some loose ends in that respect. So it's one of those, in terms of how it plays out in the long run, people might say, oh goodness me, they are winning everything because they do have all of the big owners and the sheer number of horses in their yard and the geographical ability to race all over the country. But I don't think it's not like Paul Nicholls and Nicky Henderson linking up, shall we say, in terms of how people have reacted to it. So it's interesting from that perspective, and perhaps that's because France is in a stabler position in terms of its ownership base and its training base.
That's a good point as well.
That sort of thing.
Neither Rouget nor Renier won the Prix Jacques le Marois though yesterday. We had an impressive winner.
We did, and Charyn's been so impressive for all season.
Yeah.
His only defeat came at Newbury in the Lockinge. He was beaten by Audience, who then went and franked the form at Glorious Goodwood. So, the form stacks up, and I was lucky to be at Chester last weekend, and I spoke to Sylvester de Souza about the chances of Charyn and, how he feels the horse is. Is it one of the best he's ridden? And he said he's up there, certainly, with what he's shown this year. And I think you only had to look at, the field he beat on paper, the names that were in there, and the manner that he won the race, the huge turn of foot to pull clear of some impressive rivals, and even at the end, how it virtually brought Roger Varing to tears in his interview. And, Roger said that he's such a relaxed character at home, Charyn, and for him to produce that, especially on the back of what he did in the Queen Anne at Royal Ascot as well, was even more impressive. And I think he's now been cut short to favourite for the QE2 as well.
He looks the real deal now, doesn't he, Charyn? I mean, from a horse who, going into this year, was a good horse, but a bit probably like a horse like Hartem, and then didn't run the Jacques le Marois. You sort of thought you knew where you were with him. All of a sudden, he's setting new PBs every time, and he looks a genuine, not just Group 1 miler, but a very, very good Group 1 miler.
Yeah, I know there were slightly extenuating circumstances, but if you'd have said that Inspiral and Charyn would meet in the Prix Jacques le Marois and one would beat the other by, how many lengths was it? 4 lengths, something like that?
It was 3 lengths and a head.
Okay, so 4 lengths wasn't a million miles away.
No, it wasn't.
This time last year, you would say Inspiral's the one winning every day of the week, and Charyn is a solid performer, Group 2 performer, runs fine in Group 1s, but always gets outclassed. So credit to Roger Varing and his team, our old colleague David Baxter, who works there as their racing manager, and credit to the owners, Nerlan Bizikoff and his team at Sunbe. Continue to pump huge amounts of money in, and he's got himself a very good horse who very possibly might stay in training next year as well,
which would be great. Presumably Inspiral won't stay in training, Liam. You look at her performance on Sunday, you look at 2 ways, and one it was her best run of the year. She's run a cracking race to finish third, but again, and not for the first time, she's shown that reluctance to come out of there. She maybe not reluctance, but she certainly was very slow to start. If you're Cheveley Park stud, if you're putting yourselves in their shoes, what would you do? Would you take the view that we're not obviously going to be selling her? Would you crack on and maybe try and go for a repeat win in the Breeders' Cup?
I think what we spoke about this before the show, Lee. I think it could, increase the value of her in the future if she goes to the Breeders' Cup and does what she, has done in America before and win again. You can look at that race yesterday and you can split it in two parts. Obviously, I think she gave away 8 lengths at the start of the race. John Gosden said that after the race to our colleague Scott Burton. But the second part of the race, she was fantastic, and to make up that distance after the start she had was sort of showing signs of what she can do.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, it's not worked for her this season, so you're kind of leaving that race with more questions than answers. It'll be interesting to see what Chris Richardson and Cheveley Park want to do now. I'm sure we'll find out this week once they've assessed the race and look back at it. But it wouldn't. I don't think it'd harm anyone if she was to have another crack at the Breeders' Cup again. Give it one last hurrah and see how she goes from there.
If she goes to California, Lee.
I know what you're about to say.
Yeah.
Who might ride her?
Who's hanging around in California at the moment saying, I love it over here.
Should have gone 10 years ago.
I'm never going to retire. I will be here forever.
Oh,
Lanfranco.
see what we did there.
Yeah. So is that the possibility? You'll have quick round at Del Mar.
Yeah.
Frankie flying dismount.
Yeah.
Everyone sails off into the sunset. It's a Hollywood ending.
Beautiful.
Isn't it? Near Hollywood.
Beautiful ending. And we probably should say, well, obviously, Kieran Schumacher, a lot of debate last week about the fact he didn't ride Inspire. Ryan Moore came into ride. Ryan's been used widely by Cheveley Park Stud.
And he's brilliant.
And he's
literally brilliant.
Yeah, best jockey in the world. I thought it was interesting, just in terms of this general debate, riding in that race yesterday, one place behind in Spiral was Callum Shepherd, who's been through this whole debate this year. He lost the ride on the horse, went on to finish second in the Derby, but he handled it exceptionally well, and you would say now his share price, even since then, has soared again. So when this sort of thing happens, it need not be a desperate long-term situation. I think most people would agree that as jockeys, Kieran Schumacher is very, very good indeed, but he's held in high respect for a lot of reasons beyond his abilities in the saddle.
For sure. And he has the backing of the Gosden Yard. John and Thady Gosden have been absolutely staunch behind him. John Shack, Emily Upjohn's co-owner, wrote in to say the support's there. Look, it's an isolated case, you would argue. Inspire is obviously a very high-profile horse, and she's not been running to form this season. And the various reasons have been given by connections why that was in terms of distance and time of the year and all that sort of stuff. It rather grew legs to the story, didn't it, through the week?
Yeah.
And perhaps people are projecting their own views of how horses performed, how a jockey's onto the news that's come out. But look, Kieran Schumacher's a very capable jockey, and he's a good guy, and he's been through a lot of adversity in the past. So I'm sure he'll be all right, provided he keeps the backing of the people that are at the yard, which he seems to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I reckon we've discussed 3 stories there. My job now is to decide a winning story. Before I do that, though, this very beautiful thing, the big kickoff, our pull-out supplement newspaper magazine. Well, basically a magazine on news pages, isn't it? Because it's so good.
It is, and you could sit there in your easy chair with your cup of coffee and read that.
Yeah,
no problem.
Yeah,
spit out your coffee when you read what they've had to say about the Mighty Saints. But
I was going to say, what have they had to say?
Well,
about
you have to buy
Saints?
the big kickoff to see. But it's
not good news, though, is it?
No, I'm unimpressed with their view of Southampton, the greatest team the world has ever seen.
Right. Okay. What's your team then?
Manchester United.
Okay.
So anything could happen.
Good words in there about Manchester United? Positive?
Probably not. There never normally is with Manchester United.
Okay.
It's probably when will Ten Hag get sacked, I imagine.
Right.
But we'll see.
Well, it's always good to be upbeat at this time of the season, isn't it? And you can get this big kickoff on or in the Racing Post shop, so make sure you do that. Tons of work went into it. Okay, time then to wrap up the programme. This bit is the bit where I say who has the winning story. Of course, the lovely thing to do was say that Liam, in his first week on the show has the winning story, but that would just lead to sort of false senses of how this thing works. It's a cruel old business, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you win, don't you, Lee? What happens is you say, everyone's got a lovely story, and then my story wins.
No. Every time I'm in this chair, I talk about my guilt complex.
Okay, yeah, and then give it to yourself.
Then I can't do that. So you have the winning
thank you very much.
It's huge.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel a worthy victor. Thank you very much.
And
Lee.
you are a very worthy
I'm sorry,
victor.
Liam, but it will get better.
Next time.
Potentially. That then was this week's show. Liam Headd, thank you for coming on board for the first time. Good luck in Lambourne. Pete, thank you. You've got a good week ahead?
No trips out with you, Lee, but yes.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm looking forward to it.
Another one soon, hopefully.
Yeah.
I hope you all have a great week ahead. Enjoy, if you're going racing, enjoy the sunshine, and we will see you soon. Until then, bye-bye.